What do Space Marines think of every xenos race? I remember the smell of burned alien flesh when I first asked that question. My name is Brother-Sergeant Davian Thule of the Blood Ravens 3rd Company, and I've fought 17 different xenos species across 43 worlds in my 2 centuries of service. You think Space Marines are simple killers who see all aliens as identical threats, but you don't know what we actually think in the moments between battles. Each xenos race earns its own kind of hatred, its own flavor of contempt, its own degree of respect we'd never admit aloud. The Eldar taught me caution. The Orks taught me fury. The Tyranids taught me fear. This is my testimony about what the Adeptus Astartes really believes about the galaxy's alien filth, and why some xenos scare us more than we'll ever tell the Imperium. Chapter 1. Initiation to the Alien. I killed my first xenos at age 14, 3 years after my induction into the Blood Ravens. Not during a proper campaign, just a training exercise on a dead world in the Segmentum Obscurus, where the chapter maintained combat ranges. The creature was a captured orc, small by greenskin standards, barely 2 meters tall, wounded, chained, and scheduled for termination. This, Chaplain Morteus had announced to the assembled neophytes, is your enemy. Study it, learn it, then kill it. We were 12 neophytes, fresh from our first successful organ implantations, still getting used to the enhanced strength and aggression pumping through our altered bodies. The orc watched us with yellow eyes, intelligent despite its brutish appearance. Not afraid, calculating. I'd been taught that xenos were abominations, creatures that existed in defiance of the Emperor's vision for the galaxy. The Codex Astartes dedicated entire chapters to xenocide tactics, emphasizing that aliens weren't simply enemies, but fundamental errors in the galactic order that required correction through extermination. But standing before that orc, seeing how it tracked each neophyte's position, how its muscles tensed in preparation for violence despite its chains, I realized something the teachings hadn't quite conveyed. The xenos weren't stupid. This wasn't a mindless beast. It was a warrior, evaluating threats, planning escape or attack, operating according to its own brutal logic. Chaplain Morteus released the chains. The orc moved faster than I'd expected, launched itself at the nearest neophyte, a kid named Arven from a death world whose feral toughness had earned his selection. The greenskin's fist caught Arven across the jaw, snapping his head back with a crack that echoed across the training ground. Arven went down hard. 3 neophytes rushed the orc. It met them with savage efficiency, trading blows that would have killed normal humans. Its biology was wrong. Too dense, too resilient, healing visibly from wounds that should have been crippling. I watched a neophyte drive a combat knife into the orc's kidney. It grunted, backhanded the kid 15 meters across the ground, and kept fighting. Thule, Chaplain Morteus called. Your turn. I engaged. The orc was already bleeding from a dozen wounds, but it came at me with undiminished aggression. We traded blows, my enhanced strength against its natural brutality. I felt ribs crack when its fist connected with my torso, felt my own punch crater its sternum with satisfying impact. The fight lasted 47 seconds. I killed it by breaking its neck with a twisting motion that required both hands and all my enhanced leverage. The orc died grinning, yellow eyes gleaming with what I could only interpret as satisfaction. It had given its enemies a proper fight. That's all it had wanted. This, Chaplain Morteus said as I stood over the corpse, breathing hard, is the fundamental truth about xenos. They are not like us. Their biology, psychology, and culture operate on principles alien to human understanding, but they are not incompetent, not weak. Each species has evolved its own advantages, its own strengths, its own methods of warfare. Underestimating them kills battle brothers. Understanding them keeps you alive. He pulled up a hololith showing dozens of xeno species, each one catalogued with threat assessment data and recommended purge protocols. The Imperium teaches that all xenos are equally contemptible. This is politically necessary, but tactically inadequate. In truth, each alien race requires different strategies, different approaches, different levels of concern. The hololith cycled through images, Eldar warriors in exotic armor, Tau battlesuits bristling with weapons, Tyranid bioforms that looked like evolutionary nightmares, Necron constructs that defied biological categorization entirely. Over your centuries of service, the chaplain continued, you will fight many of these species. Some will earn your grudging respect through martial prowess. Some will earn your contempt through cowardice. Some will earn your hatred through atrocities. And some, a rare few, will earn your fear through capabilities that challenge even the Adeptus Astartes. Today's lesson: know your enemy. Study them. Learn to recognize xenos by silhouette, by tactics, by the wounds they inflict. Because in combat, the difference between life and death is often just recognition speed. We spent the next 6 hours studying xenos anatomy and tactics, learning how Orks functioned as a gestalt consciousness that grew stronger in groups, how Eldar relied on speed and precision to compensate for fragility, how Tyranids adapted and evolved in response to threats, how Tau technology gave them range advantage that Space Marines struggled to counter. It was the first time I understood that the Imperium's simple narrative, aliens bad, humans good, was a comfortable lie. The galaxy was more complex, more dangerous, and my survival would depend on understanding that complexity rather than retreating into ideological simplicity. My second Xenos encounter came 2 years later, during my first real deployment. The Blood Ravens' 3rd Company had been dispatched to an agri-world on the eastern fringe, where Tau forces had established a beachhead. Our mission: eliminate the Xenos' presence and restore Imperial authority. I was part of a tactical squad led by Brother-Sergeant Davian, a veteran of 70 years who'd fought in the Damocles Crusade and understood Tau better than most. We deployed via drop pod, hitting the planet's surface at dawn and immediately engaging Tau Fire warriors dug into prepared positions. The difference between training and reality became apparent within seconds. Tau pulse rifles didn't just shoot, they vaporized. I watched battle brothers take hits that punched through ceramite armor, superheated plasma turning flesh and bone into vapor. The Tau fought with disciplined precision, falling back through prepared kill zones, using drone support and coordinated fire patterns. "They're cowards!" one of my battle brothers shouted, advancing into the kill zone. "They're smart," Sergeant Davian corrected. "Cover, now!" A Tau battlesuit dropped from concealment above us, fusion blasters lighting up our position. We scattered, taking casualties, learning in real time that Tau doctrine prioritized firepower over close combat. They designed their entire military to engage at ranges where Space Marine advantages, enhanced strength, close combat prowess, intimidation factor, meant nothing. We eventually won that engagement by closing distance, forcing the Tau into melee where their doctrine failed them. But the victory was costly. 7 battle brothers dead or critically wounded. A tactical squad reduced to half strength against an enemy that had simply executed its doctrine effectively. "This is why we study xenos," Sergeant Davian told us afterward, standing over the bodies of fallen Tau. "They're not mindless. They have strategies, technologies, and doctrines refined over centuries. The Tau learned from the Damocles Crusade, adapted, improved. If we'd fought them the same way we fought 50 years ago, we'd all be dead. Understanding the enemy isn't respect, it's survival." I looked at the Tau corpses. Smaller than humans, weaker in close combat, but equipped with technology that leveled the battlefield. They'd chosen tactical retreat over dying in place. They'd used combined arms and force multiplication. They'd fought smart rather than brave, and they'd killed 7 Space Marines doing it. That's when I began to understand the nuance. The Orks I'd killed in training were savage but direct. The Tau were calculating and precise. Both were xenos. Both were enemies. But they required completely different tactical approaches. Over the next decade, I encountered more species. Eldar pirates who struck from nowhere and vanished before we could respond. Dark Eldar raiders who fought with casual cruelty and supernatural speed. Necrons who simply wouldn't die, their bodies reforming from wounds that should have been final. Each encounter refined my understanding. The Imperium's propaganda said xenos were uniformly inferior. My experience said they were uniformly dangerous, each in different ways. And the Space Marines who survived learned to recognize those differences and adapt accordingly. By my 30th year of service, I developed mental categories for xenos species, not based on threat level alone, but on the specific type of threat they represented and the mindset required to counter them effectively. Some xenos you fought with rage, some with caution, some with overwhelming force, and some, a rare few, you fought while praying to the Emperor that your preparations were sufficient. I earned promotion to Brother-Sergeant at age 47, taking command of my own tactical squad. One of my first responsibilities was training newly inducted battle brothers in xenos recognition and threat assessment. I found myself echoing Chaplain Mortius's lessons from decades earlier. The Imperium teaches that all xenos are equally contemptible, I told my squad during their first briefing. This is true philosophically, but dangerous tactically. Each species has evolved its own advantages. Your job is to recognize those advantages quickly and counter them effectively. Understanding the enemy doesn't make you sympathetic to them. It makes you more efficient at killing them. I pulled up combat footage from dozens of engagements, showing my battle brothers how different xenos species operated. Ork mob tactics versus Eldar hit and run. Tyranid overwhelming numbers versus Necron technological superiority. Tau standoff firepower versus Dark Eldar sadistic precision. By the end of your service, I continued, you'll develop your own assessments of each species, your own understanding of their strengths, weaknesses, and the best methods for purging them. Some of you will learn to hate certain xenos more than others. That's natural, but never let hatred make you stupid. The moment you stop thinking tactically about the enemy is the moment they kill you. One of the neophytes raised his hand. Sergeant, which xenos do you hate most? I thought about that. 47 years of service, dozens of species encountered, thousands of aliens killed. Which did I hate most? The ones that made me respect them, I admitted. Because respect is a luxury we can't afford. Every xenos species is a threat to humanity's survival. Some are just better at being threats than others, and those are the ones that keep me awake between deployments, planning how to kill them more efficiently next time. That was the truth no chaplain would speak aloud. We were programmed to hate xenos, conditioned to see them as abominations. But somewhere between indoctrination and experience, we developed nuanced understanding. We learned which aliens were savage and which were sophisticated, which were cowards and which were courageous in their own alien ways. We learned that the galaxy was complicated, that the Emperor's vision of human supremacy faced opposition from species as determined and capable as we were, and that victory required more than simple hatred. It required understanding, adaptation, and the willingness to see aliens as the complex threats they actually were. This is what Space Marines really think about xenos, not the propaganda, not the simple narratives, the complicated, nuanced, carefully hidden truth that we'd never speak to the Imperium's civilians, because they need the simple story. They need to believe we're crushing inferior enemies beneath our righteous boots. But we know better. We fought the aliens, died to them, learned from them, and that knowledge changes everything. Chapter 2. The Orks. I've killed more orcs than any other xenos species, hundreds of them, maybe thousands if you count the smaller ones during War. Purges. After 2 centuries of service, I can recognize orc subspecies by silhouette alone, predict their tactics based on clan coloring, and estimate a war boss's experience level by counting scars and daca. And I respect them. Emperor, forgive me, but I do. Not morally. They're xenos abominations who exist only to be purged. But martially, tactically, the orcs are the enemy I understand best and fear least, which paradoxically makes them the most dangerous when you're not paying attention. My most significant orc engagement came during my 63rd year of service. The Blood Ravens had been deployed to Tartarus, a world where a massive war had erupted under Warboss Gorguts. Intelligence estimates suggested 2 million orcs in system, with more arriving via ramshackle space hulks every week. We hit them with 3 full companies, nearly 300 Space Marines supported by Imperial Guard regiments and Titan support. The campaign lasted 8 months and cost us 47 battle brothers before we finally broke the War and sent the survivors fleeing into the void. Those 8 months taught me everything about Orks that decades of previous encounters had only hinted at. First lesson. Orks are simple, but not stupid. Their technology looks crude. Welded scrap, oversized weapons, vehicles that shouldn't function according to any engineering principle. But it works. Not despite its crudeness, but because of it. Ork technology operates partially on belief. If an Ork thinks his gun shoots, it shoots. If he believes his armor protects, it protects. This makes them frustratingly adaptable. They're not constrained by the same technological limitations that bind human equipment. I watched an Ork mech boy repair a destroyed truck during combat. Just started welding random plates together while we were shooting at him. The vehicle shouldn't have functioned. The engine was missing half its components. The weapons were literally held together with wire and hope. But the Ork climbed in, fired it up, and drove straight at our position, shooting wildly. We destroyed it eventually, but the sheer audacity of fixing a vehicle mid-battle while under fire spoke to something fundamental about greenskin psychology. They don't fear death, not the way humans do. Orks fight because fighting is their purpose, their joy, their entire reason for existence. Dying in combat isn't tragedy to them, it's completion, success, the ultimate expression of what they are. "Sergeant," one of my battle brothers asked during a brief respite from combat, "why do they keep charging? We've killed hundreds. They've seen what happens. Why don't they break?" "Because breaking would be worse than dying," I explained. Orks are biologically programmed for warfare. Their entire species exists to fight, kill, and die in combat. Retreating from worthy enemies would contradict their fundamental nature. They'd rather die fighting us than survive by running. It's not courage in the human sense. It's just what they are. Second lesson. Orks grow stronger through combat. Literally. Their biology responds to warfare by making them bigger, tougher, more dangerous. A young Ork might stand 2 meters tall and weigh 90 kilos. A veteran warboss who's survived decades of constant warfare can reach 4 meters and weigh as much as a dreadnought. I fought Gorguts personally during the campaign's final days. He'd grown massive through months of constant combat, his body adapting and enlarging with each victory. When we finally cornered him in his fortress city, he stood nearly 5 meters tall, wrapped in armor plates that looked like they'd been stripped from Imperial tanks, wielding a power claw that could tear through ceramite like parchment. The duel lasted 14 minutes. Gorguts was strong enough to physically lift me and throw me across the chamber, fast enough to keep pace with my enhanced reflexes, skilled enough to fight 8 battle brothers simultaneously and actually win exchanges. He'd grown into something that transcended normal Ork capabilities, evolved through warfare into something approaching a primordial force. We killed him eventually, 8 of us working in coordinated pattern, exploiting openings, overwhelming even his immense capabilities through combined arms. But he died laughing, yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction that he'd found enemies worthy of his strength. "Best fight I ever had," he managed to say through a throat I just crushed. "You Space Marines, you the best. The biggest, the toughest, the best scrap in the whole galaxy. I'm happy." Then he died, satisfied, complete. He'd lived for warfare and died in glorious combat against elite enemies. From an Ork perspective, his life couldn't have been more successful. Third lesson. Orks are a horde species with sophisticated leadership. The common narrative treats them as mindless mobs. Reality is more complex. Ork society operates on pure meritocracy. The strongest lead, the weakest follow. But strength includes not just physical might, but also tactical cunning, for Ork definitions of cunning, and the ability to attract followers. War bosses like Gorguts don't maintain control through fear or ideology. They maintain it through constant demonstrations of competence. An Ork follows a war boss because that war boss knows where the best fights are, leads successful campaigns, and embodies everything an Ork aspires to become. This creates weird respect dynamics. I've watched Ork mobs turn on their leaders mid-battle, when those leaders demonstrated incompetence, seen ambitious knobs challenge war bosses and take control if they won. The entire species operates as one massive ongoing competition to determine who's the biggest, baddest fighter. It's savage, brutal, completely alien to human social structures. And also, Emperor help me, kind of admirable in its simplicity. No politics, no ideology, no corruption, just pure might makes right taken to its logical extreme. Fourth lesson. Orks are the enemy you can predict most reliably. Their tactics rarely surprise. They move toward the enemy in the most direct route possible. They shoot everything they have at the biggest threat. They close to melee range as quickly as feasible. There's nuance in execution. Different clans have different specializations, but the fundamental approach remains constant. This predictability makes them simultaneously easy to fight and dangerous to underestimate. Easy because you always know generally what they'll do. Dangerous because knowing what's coming doesn't always help when what's coming is 2,000 orcs charging your position while shooting wildly and screaming their lungs out. I hate fighting orcs, Brother-Sergeant Corvin told me once, because they're honest. No ambushes, no tricks, no psychological warfare, just violence delivered with maximum enthusiasm. You can't intimidate them, can't break their morale, can't make them reconsider. You just kill them until there aren't enough left to be threatening. It's exhausting. He was right. Orc campaigns became wars of attrition. You couldn't break them psychologically, couldn't starve them out. They ate anything, including each other. Couldn't destroy their industrial capacity. They built new weapons from literal garbage. You just killed them faster than they could reproduce and hoped the energy dissipated before reinforcements arrived. After Tartarus, after 8 months of constant orc combat, I'd formed my comprehensive assessment of the greenskins. Orc strengths, biologically optimized for warfare, virtually immune to fear and morale failure, rapidly adaptive technology, incredibly resilient to damage, grow stronger through combat experience, reproduce quickly through spores, require minimal logistics or supply lines. Orc weaknesses, predictable tactics, limited strategic thinking beyond go there, fight that. Vulnerable to decapitation, strikes against leadership, infighting when victory seems certain. Technology unreliable by human standards. Weak to coordinated precision fire before melee engagement. Recommended tactics: engage at range when possible. Target knobs and war bosses to collapse command structure. Use heavy weapons against larger variants. Never allow them to close to melee range in large numbers. Exploit their predictability with layered defenses. Purge thoroughly. Spores can regenerate populations quickly. Personal assessment. The orcs are the xenos I respect most and fear least. They're honest enemies who fight according to principles I understand, even if I find those principles abhorrent. They're not scheming like Eldar, not coldly calculating like Tau, not incomprehensibly alien like Tyranids. They're just warriors who exist to fight. In another galaxy, under different circumstances, if orcs weren't xenos filth destined for purging, they'd make worthy opponents in ritualized combat. Their martial culture, their emphasis on strength and courage, their complete lack of deception or manipulation. These are qualities Space Marines can understand even while despising the creatures who embody them. But they are xenos. They exist in defiance of the Emperor's vision, and so they must be destroyed, no matter how much their straightforward warrior nature resonates with our own. I've trained 4 generations of Bloodraven's neophytes in anti-orc tactics. My advice is always the same. Respect their combat capabilities, understand their biology and culture, learn to recognize the signs of an emerging and purge it before it reaches critical mass. But never ever forget that they're alien. Their simplicity is deceptive. Their friendliness in the heat of battle, some orcs will complement your fighting skills while trying to kill you, is biologically programmed, not genuine emotion. They're weapons. Living weapons forged by the old ones during the war in heaven, designed to fight and die and spread across the galaxy like a plague of violence. The fact that they enjoy their purpose doesn't make them less dangerous. If anything, it makes them more so, because an enemy who loves warfare will never stop fighting, no matter how badly they're losing. Kill them efficiently, purge them thoroughly, and accept that somewhere in the galaxy, right now, more orcs are growing in forgotten places, preparing for the next war, eager for the chance to fight space marines again, because that's what they are. That's all they'll ever be. The galaxy's permanent warrior caste, existing in perpetual war, finding joy in violence and satisfaction in death. Emperor, forgive me for understanding them so well, but understanding is what keeps my battle brothers alive when the green tide comes screaming out of the wilderness. That's the truth about orcs, the truth space marines know but rarely speak. They're the enemy we understand best, respect grudgingly, and will fight forever without hope of final victory. Because even if we killed every orc in the galaxy today, their spores would birth new ones tomorrow, and the cycle would begin again. They're eternal, unkillable as a species. The one xenos threat that will outlast the Imperium itself, and somehow that makes them the most honest enemy we face. Chapter 3. The Eldar. I first fought Eldar during my 28th year of service, on a maiden world the Imperium had designated for colonization. We arrived expecting token resistance. Intelligence suggested only a small craft world presence, maybe 100 guardians at most. We deployed 2 tactical squads, 40 battle brothers total, supported by Devastator fire support. The Eldar killed 17 of us in the first 6 minutes. Not through overwhelming numbers, not through superior firepower, through precision, speed, and a level of tactical sophistication that made our Codex-approved approaches look crude by comparison. They hit us from angles we hadn't anticipated, using weapons that phased through cover, appearing and disappearing via webway gates we couldn't track or target. When the engagement finally ended, when they'd accomplished whatever objective brought them there and simply vanished, we held the field but felt like we'd lost. 17 battle brothers dead, Eldar casualties, 3, maybe 4. We found so little blood we couldn't confirm accurate kills. What happened? Our company captain demanded, reviewing combat footage. What happened was, we'd engaged an enemy that evolved warfare into art form, while humanity was still hitting each other with rocks. The Eldar had been manipulating probability fields, reading our tactical patterns in real time, and exploiting weaknesses in our doctrine that we didn't know existed until they'd already killed us through them. That was my introduction to the truth about Eldar, the truth that the Imperium obscures behind propaganda about dying race, and weaklings hiding in craft worlds. The Eldar terrify us, not openly. You'll never hear a space marine admit fear. But the Terra is there, buried beneath contempt and hatred, manifesting as excessive aggression whenever we face them. We hate the Eldar more viciously than they deserve based purely on threat assessment, and that disproportionate hatred masks something we'd never acknowledge. They're what humanity could have been if we'd evolved differently, and they're proof that superiority doesn't guarantee survival. Over the following decades, I encountered Eldar dozens of times. Craft world war hosts defending maiden worlds. Harlequin masks appearing from nowhere to interfere in our campaigns. Exodites defending their primitive worlds with weapons that made our finest technology look crude. And always we paid more dearly than intelligence suggested we should. The Eldar are masters of the tactical ambush. They don't fight battles, they execute operations. Every engagement serves a larger strategic purpose we rarely understand until it's too late to counter. They'll sacrifice valuable positions to draw us into kill zones. They'll allow us minor victories to enable major objectives. They think in terms of campaigns while we're focused on individual battles. Brother Captain Davian, one of our chapter's most decorated commanders, once explained it during a strategic briefing. Fighting Eldar is like playing regicide against an opponent who sees 20 moves ahead while you're focused on the immediate exchange. They're already planning 3 battles from now while you're trying to win this one. The only way to counter them is to match their strategic thinking, which requires fundamentally restructuring how we approach warfare. But the Codex Astartes doesn't really account for enemies like the Eldar. Our doctrine emphasizes direct assault, overwhelming firepower and shock tactics, all effective against most xenos. nearly useless against opponents who refused to meet us on our terms. I learned to recognize the Eldar sub-factions and adjust tactics accordingly. Craftworld Eldar, the civilized ones, if xenos can be civilized. They fight with perfect coordination, every warrior moving in synchronization, like parts of a single organism. Their aspect. Warriors specialize absolutely. Howling banshees for close assault, fire dragons for anti-armor, dark reapers for heavy fire support. They rarely commit to prolonged engagements, preferring to strike precisely and withdraw before we can respond effectively. Strength, tactical flexibility, technological superiority, psychic support, speed. Weakness, fragility, low numbers, risk aversion, predictable paths through webway gates. Tactics, force prolonged engagement, destroy webway access points, target leadership units, use overwhelming firepower to negate their mobility advantage. Dark Eldar, the nightmare version. Everything terrible about Craftworld Eldar multiplied by sadistic cruelty and zero restraint. They don't fight to achieve objectives. They fight to inflict suffering because their twisted souls literally feed on agony. I fought Dark Eldar once. Once was enough. They'd raided an Imperial world, not for resources or territory, but purely to take slaves for their torture arenas. We intercepted their raiding party during extraction. The battle was brief and horrifying. Dark Eldar don't just kill, they maim, torture, and inflict wounds specifically calculated to maximize suffering while preventing immediate death. I watched them take a battle brother alive, saw them drag him into one of their transport craft while he screamed through Vox channels. We tried to recover him, but they'd vanished into the webway before we could mount a rescue. 3 days later, his body was returned. What they'd done to him in those 3 days violated every principle of warfare. He'd been kept alive through it all, conscious, aware, experiencing every moment of methodically inflicted agony. We granted him the Emperor's peace, burned his remains with full honors. And I added Dark Eldar to my personal list of xenos that deserved extinction with extreme prejudice. Strength, speed, sadism weaponized, poison weapons, slave-taking expertise. Weakness, arrogance, cruelty, making them predictable, vulnerable to counter-ambush. Tactics, offer no opportunities for slave-taking, execute wounded immediately to deny them victims, use overwhelming force, accept no prisoners. Harlequins, the strangest Eldar variant. Warrior performers who move like they're dancing, wearing masks and costumes, fighting with weapons that seem ceremonial until they're killing you with them. I've faced Harlequins twice. Both times, I barely survived. They move faster than the human eye can track, not through technology, but through perfect biomechanical efficiency. Every motion flows into the next without wasted energy. They're fighting and killing while appearing to simply move through space. A Harlequin solitaire killed 3 battle brothers during one encounter before we brought it down. It took sustained fire from an entire tactical squad, and even then, it nearly reached melee range where it would have been unstoppable. When we examined the body, we found its weapons were ceremonial, ancient, ornate, clearly valuable. But they'd cut through ceramite like it was parchment. Strength, impossible speed, psychic abilities, unpredictability, elite training. Weakness, very small numbers, often operate independently. Overconfidence. Tactics, concentrated fire, deny them melee engagement, treat every Harlequin as leadership-level threat. Exodites, Eldar, who rejected their craft world society and returned to primitive agrarian existence on maiden worlds. They fight with a weird combination of Stone Age culture and high technology. Warriors riding dinosaur analogs while carrying weapons that defy physics. I respect the Exodites most among Eldar variants. They've abandoned their species' arrogance, live simply, and only fight when their worlds are threatened. They're defending homes rather than pursuing galactic manipulation. If they weren't xenos occupying worlds the Imperium needs, they'd almost be sympathetic. But they are xenos. They do occupy those worlds, and so they die like all the others. Strength, defending home territory, mounted combat advantages, knowledge of local terrain. Weakness, limited numbers, technology gaps, less sophisticated tactics than craft-world kin tactics, standard purge protocols, orbital bombardment when possible, rapid overwhelm before they can fortify. What do Space Marines really think about the Eldar? We think they're everything we fear becoming. They were once the galaxy's dominant species, so advanced that their technology looked like magic, so powerful that they thought themselves invincible. Then they fell. Their civilization collapsed. Their dominance ended. They survive now as scattered remnants, desperate refugees clinging to the wreckage of former glory. We look at them and see the Imperium's potential future. We see what happens when a species grows complacent, when they prioritize pleasure over purpose, when they forget that the galaxy is hostile and survival requires constant vigilance. The Eldar are our warning, our cautionary tale made flesh, and we hate them for it. But beneath the hate is fear. Fear that humanity could follow the same path. Fear that our Imperium, for all its might, could collapse the same way their empire did. Fear that 10,000 years from now, humans might be the scattered refugees, while some new species dominates the galaxy. We'd never admit this. The Imperium's propaganda teaches that Eldar are weak, dying, irrelevant. We're encouraged to view them with contempt as lesser beings whose time has passed. And we do, vocally, publicly, in our official reports and communications. But privately, in the moments between battles, we study them obsessively, learn their tactics, try to understand their technology, attempt to grasp their strategic thinking. Because enemies you can dismiss don't require study. Only enemies you fear demand that level of attention. The Eldar also possess something we lack: perspective. They've survived for millions of years, witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They've seen species emerge, dominate, and disappear into extinction. And they're still here, diminished but enduring. I once found an Eldar Farseer wounded after a battle. Should have executed it immediately. Protocol demands no xenos survivors. But something made me hesitate. The Farseer looked at me with eyes that held millennia of experience. "You fight well, human," it said in perfect Gothic. "Your species shows promise. Perhaps you'll succeed where we failed. Perhaps your Imperium will endure where our empire collapsed. Or perhaps," it laughed, a sound like breaking glass, "perhaps you'll learn what we learned. That dominance is temporary. That pride precedes extinction. That the galaxy breaks even the mighty eventually. I killed it then, put a bolt round through its head before it could say more. But the words stayed with me, still stay with me, because the Farseer was right. The galaxy does break the mighty, and the Imperium, for all its strength, isn't immune to the forces that destroyed the Eldar Empire. What do Space Marines think of the Eldar? We think they're dangerous, sophisticated, masters of warfare who make us work harder for every victory than we'd admit. We think they're proud beyond reason and manipulative beyond tolerance. And we think that studying them might teach us how to avoid their fate, how to recognize the warning signs of Imperial decline, how to maintain vigilance against the forces that destroyed their civilization. We'll never say this aloud. The Imperium requires us to express only contempt for xenos. But the truth is more complex. The Eldar terrify us precisely because they prove that being advanced, being superior, being dominant isn't enough to guarantee survival. They're the enemy that makes us question whether humanity's supremacy is truly inevitable, or just another chapter in the galaxy, its endless cycle of rise and fall. And that's the thought that keeps us awake between deployments. Chapter 4. The Tyranids. I've fought. Tyranids 3 times in my 2 centuries of service. 3 campaigns against the Great Devourer. Each one fundamentally changed how I understood fear, survival, and the nature of threats facing humanity. The first time, I thought I understood what we faced. Intelligence briefings had prepared us. extragalactic organisms that consumed biomass, adapted rapidly, operated through hive mind coordination, dangerous but manageable through proper tactics and overwhelming firepower. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The invasion hit Varestus Prime, an agri-world on the eastern fringe. Initial contact reported xenos creatures attacking outlying settlements. Standard response protocols were initiated. 3 guard regiments deployed. Then the Vox channels went silent. The Blood Ravens' 3rd Company arrived 6 days later. From orbit, Varestus looked normal. Oceans, continents, cloud patterns. But as we descended, the wrongness became apparent. The oceans were discolored, filled with organic matter breaking down into base nutrients. The vegetation was dying, turning grey and lifeless. And covering every surface, spreading like a living carpet, was the Tyranid ground cover. Alien growths that dissolved everything they touched, processing the planet's biomass for consumption. We dropped into what had been Varestus's capital city. Population, 3 million. Now, 0. The building stood empty, structurally intact, but completely devoid of life. No bodies, no blood, no signs of battle. Just silence and the creeping alien growth consuming everything organic. "Where are the defenders?" one of my battle brothers asked. "Inside the Tyranids now," Sergeant Corvin replied. "The first wave probably harvested them all, used their genetic material to spawn the combat forms we're about to face." He was right. The Tyranids hit us at dusk, emerging from underground tunnels and ruined buildings in numbers that defied counting. Hormagaunts by the hundreds, scuttling forward on 4 legs, scything talons raised. Termagants behind them, living guns that fired organisms instead of bullets. Warriors coordinating the swarm, massive 6-meter-tall monsters that radiated psychic pressure. We fought for 16 hours straight. No breaks, no respite, just continuous combat against an enemy that never stopped coming. We killed thousands of them, tens of thousands, and more kept arriving, drawn by the psychic beacon of the hive mind, replacing losses faster than we could inflict them. The moment I understood what we faced, really understood, came during hour 9. I'd just killed my 400th Hormagaunt, bolt pistol empty, combat knife in hand, fighting in melee because we'd burned through our ammunition faster than supply could replenish. The creature's blood was acidic, eating into my armor. Its corpse twitched with residual nervous energy, and through the pile of dead Tyranids surrounding my position, more came. Always more. "They're not trying to win," I realized aloud. "They're testing us, learning what kills us so they can adapt." Brother Chaplain Meridius, fighting beside me, confirmed my fear. The hive mind learns from every death. Every Tyranid we kill provides data. What weapons work, what tactics succeed, how we move and fight and think. They're using this battle to gather intelligence for the next one. "Then we're training them to kill us. We're paying the learning curve cost so other worlds don't have to," Meridius corrected. "Every adaptation we force them to make here is one they can't surprise other defenders with. We're giving humanity knowledge purchased with our blood." That's when I understood the fundamental horror of Tyranids. They're not just enemies. They're an evolutionary algorithm made manifest. Every battle makes them stronger, better, more refined at the singular purpose of consumption. And there's no reasoning with them, no negotiation, no hope of peace. They exist to eat. That's their entire purpose. Converting the galaxy's biomass into more Tyranids, spreading like a plague, devouring everything until nothing remains but them. We held Varestus for 3 days before Orbital Command ordered withdrawal. The planet was lost, too much biomass already consumed, too many Tyranids dug into too many positions. We extracted under fire, leaving behind a world that would be stripped to bedrock within weeks. I watched from orbit as Exterminatus was declared. Cyclonic torpedoes fell, igniting the atmosphere, burning away the Tyranid infestation. The only mercy we could offer was total annihilation, denying the Hive Fleet the biomass it sought. 3 million Imperial citizens, converted into Tyranids, used against us, then burned away to ash. That's the calculus of fighting the Great Devourer. My second Tyranid campaign came 40 years later. Hive Fleet Kraken had bypassed the main defensive lines and struck at a shrine world deep in Imperial space. We deployed with better intelligence, better tactics, determined not to repeat Varestus's mistakes. We still lost. Not the battle. We won tactically, drove off the invasion, saved the shrine world. But we lost the war of adaptation. The Tyranids we fought on that world had evolved beyond the ones I'd faced 4 decades earlier. They'd learned from Varestus and thousands of other battles across the galaxy. The Hormagaunts moved differently, using cover and terrain in ways the earlier versions hadn't. The warriors coordinated more effectively, employing actual tactics rather than just psychic compulsion. And they had new bioforms, creatures we'd never encountered, specially evolved to counter space marine advantages. Lictors that phased in and out of visibility, appearing behind our lines to assassinate commanders. Zoanthropes that projected psychic attacks strong enough to overload our mental defenses. Carnifexes, living tanks, that shrugged off weapons that should have killed them and kept coming, adapting armor that hardened against specific damage types. They're learning faster than we are, Brother Captain Aurelian observed after one particularly brutal engagement. Every world they hit, every battle they fight, they evolve. We're using the same Codex tactics we've employed for centuries. They're creating new organisms specifically designed to counter those tactics. We're in an evolutionary arms race we're not equipped to win. He was right. The Imperium's strength is consistency. We perfect tactics, codify them, train endless generations of soldiers to execute them flawlessly. It works against most enemies because most enemies are also relatively static. But Tyranids aren't static. They're fluid, adaptive, constantly evolving. Fighting them with Codex doctrine is like fighting a learning algorithm with fixed programming. They iterate and improve while we execute the same approaches, growing less effective with each engagement. My third Tyranid campaign was the worst. Hive Fleet Leviathan had split into countless smaller splinter fleets, hitting multiple systems simultaneously. The Blood Ravens were assigned to defend a forge world whose loss would cripple the sector's manufacturing capacity. We knew they were coming, had weeks to prepare, built layered defenses, positioned forces optimally, established supply lines and fallback positions. We did everything right according to the Codex Astartes and 2 centuries of accumulated tactical wisdom. It wasn't enough. The Tyranids that hit us had been fighting in the Cryptus system for years. They'd faced Space Marines, Necrons and Orks simultaneously, adapting to multiple combat doctrines in parallel. They were the most evolved versions I'd ever encountered, faster, tougher, smarter than any previous generation. They broke through our first defensive line in 4 hours, not through overwhelming numbers, but through sophisticated combined arms tactics that would have impressed a human commander. Gargoyles harassed from the air, while Raveners tunneled behind our positions. Warriors coordinated fire support, while Carnifexes breached fortifications, and all of it executed with precision that suggested genuine intelligence rather than just hive instinct. We fell back to the forge world itself, fighting through streets and manufactorums, contesting every meter. The campaign lasted 7 months. We lost 92 battle brothers, nearly a third of the forces committed. The Forge World survived barely, at costs that made victory feel like defeat. After it ended, after we'd driven off the Hive Fleet remnants and begun repairs, I sat with Brother Chaplain Tarkus, reviewing casualty reports and combat analysis. "Tell me honestly," I said, "can we beat them? Not tactically, not in individual battles, strategically, as a species. Can humanity survive the Tyranids?" Tarkus was silent for a long time. Finally, "I don't know. The Tyranids are apex predators refined over millions of years of evolution. They've consumed countless galaxies before reaching ours. They don't tire, don't break, don't negotiate. They just eat and adapt and eat more. Fighting them is like fighting entropy. You can delay it locally, but ultimately it's inevitable. That's not an answer the Imperium wants to hear. Then we tell them what they want to hear, Tarkus replied. We say we're winning. We point to defensive victories and celebrate purged hive fleets. We maintain morale and fighting spirit. But between us, in these quiet moments, we acknowledge the truth. The Tyranids are the one xenos threat that might actually destroy humanity. Not through superior culture or technology or strategy, just through being very, very good at consuming biomass. What do Space Marines think about Tyranids? We think they're the nightmare scenario. The enemy that invalidates every advantage we possess. We're stronger than normal humans. Tyranids spawn organisms stronger than us. We're tactically sophisticated. They adapt faster than we innovate. We're biologically enhanced. Their biological perfection refined through eons. Fighting Tyranids isn't warfare in the traditional sense. It's pest control on a galactic scale. And we're not certain whether we're the exterminators or the pests. The Imperium teaches that humanity is supreme, that our destiny is to rule the galaxy. The Tyranids prove that supremacy is contextual, and destiny is just hope wrapped in better language. They're the galaxy's immune response to the infection that is complex life, and they're very good at what they do. Here's what I've learned about Tyranid subtypes and optimal counter-tactics. Purchased with decades of combat and the deaths of hundreds of battle brothers, small swarm organisms, hormagaunts, termagants, gargoyles. Purpose: overwhelming numbers, biomass expenditure, testing defenses. Weakness: fragile, dependent on synapse creatures for coordination. Tactics: area effect weapons, flamers, establish crossfire kill zones. Never engage in melee unless forced. They'll drag you down through attrition synapse creatures. Warriors, Tyranid Prime, zoanthropes. Purpose: hive mind relay, coordination, psychic support. Weakness: priority targets whose death disrupts entire formations. Tactics: focused fire from heavy weapons, eliminate before engaging swarm without synapse. Lesser organisms revert to base instincts and become manageable elite organisms, lictors, carnifexes, hive tyrants. Purpose: specialized roles, leadership, breakthrough capability. Weakness: expensive in biomass terms, limited numbers. Tactics: combined arms, multiple fire lanes, accept trading forces to eliminate them. Each one killed is a significant victory. They take time to regrow. Adaptation. Note: everything above becomes less effective with each engagement. Tyranids learn. They evolve countermeasures. What worked at Varestus fails at Cryptus. The only reliable tactic is overwhelming force applied before they can adapt. Strategic assessment. The Tyranid threat differs fundamentally from other xenos. Orks, Eldar, Tau. These can be negotiated with, predicted, countered through doctrine. Tyranids operate on principles alien to tactical thinking. Their biological imperative made manifest. Fighting them is fighting evolution itself. Can we win? Maybe. If every Imperial world coordinates defense, if the Mechanicus develops bioweapons faster than Tyranids adapt, if we're willing to sacrifice entire sectors to starve out hive fleets. Maybe, but probably not. Probably we're just buying time, delaying the inevitable, making the Great Devourer work for every meal, while hoping something changes, some advantage appears, some miracle saves us. We don't speak this truth to normal humans. They need hope. They need to believe their sacrifices matter, that humanity will triumph, that the Emperor protects. We give them that belief because they require it to keep fighting. But among Space Marines, in our private moments, we acknowledge the Terra. The Tyranids are what we fear most because they represent extinction without malice. They're not evil, they're just hungry, and we're food. Every battle brother who's fought Tyranids understands this, carries this knowledge, lives with the awareness that somewhere beyond the galaxy's edge, more hive fleets are coming, always coming, drawn by the psychic beacon of all the life in our galaxy, approaching with infinite patience and infinite hunger. We'll fight them. We'll die fighting them if necessary, because that's our purpose, our duty, our choice. But we don't expect to win. We just expect to make them pay dearly for every world, every life, every moment of survival we steal from their hunger. That's what Space Marines really think about Tyranids, not the propaganda. The cold, terrifying truth that we might be watching humanity's extinction in slow motion, one consumed world at a time. And there's nothing we can do except fight harder and hope it's enough. Chapter 5. The Tau. I hate Tau, not with the visceral hatred I have for Tyranids, or the contemptuous rage I feel toward Orks. I hate them with the frustrated bitterness of someone who sees an opponent refuse to fight on your terms and can't help but respect the audacity. The Tau shouldn't be a threat. They're young, barely 6,000 years old as a spacefaring civilization. They're physically weak compared to humans, let alone Space Marines. They have no psychers, no warp capability, no connection to the immaterium that powers the Imperium's greatest advantages. And yet they win. Keep winning. Expand, despite the Imperium's attempts to contain them. Attract human worlds to their greater good, with promises of equality and technological advancement. They're everything the Imperium isn't. Pragmatic, adaptive, willing to incorporate xenos allies, and it makes them deeply, profoundly frustrating to fight. My first Tau engagement was on Malbide, an Imperial world on the eastern fringe where Tau watercaste diplomats had been negotiating trade relations for 3 years. When we arrived to purge the xenos influence, we found that a third of the planetary defense force had defected to the Tau, voluntarily, without coercion or mind control. They'd just decided the Tau offered better governance than the Imperium. Traitors! Brother-Sergeant Corvin spat, reviewing intelligence reports. Xenos-loving traitors who'll learn what their precious greater good means when we purge them alongside their alien masters. We hit the Tau positions at dawn. 3 tactical squads supported by devastators and a dreadnought. Standard assault doctrine. Overwhelming force applied to critical points. Shock and awe to break enemy morale. The Tau let us come, fell back through prepared positions, trading space for time, using human auxiliaries as screening forces while their fire warriors retreated to better defensive terrain. We pushed forward, confident we were winning, certain that one more push would break them. Then we hit the kill zone. Fire warriors dug into buildings with overlapping fields of fire. Broadside battlesuits delivering railgun rounds that punched through ceramite armor. Drone networks providing targeting support and shield generators. Human auxiliaries with Tau pulse weapons holding flanks. And coordinating everything, a commander in crisis battlesuit who stayed just beyond our engagement range while directing the entire defense. We took 40% casualties before we forced them to retreat. 40%. Against an enemy we'd been told was technologically inferior and martially inadequate. The Tau had killed 18 battle brothers through pure tactical superiority, better technology, and doctrine that prioritized survival over glory. How? One of my battle brothers demanded afterward, staring at the bodies of our fallen. How did Xenos do this to us? Because they're not stupid, I replied. They've studied us, learned how Space Marines fight, designed their entire military to counter our advantages, and they did it in 6,000 years, while the Imperium spent 10,000 refusing to acknowledge they were a threat. That's the fundamental problem with the Tau. They're not bound by tradition or dogma. They see what works and adopt it. They encounter enemies who counter their tactics and they adapt. They don't have a codex telling them there's only one acceptable way to fight. They have doctrine that emphasizes flexibility, combined arms, and winning through superior positioning, rather than close combat. And it works. Emperor damn them, it works. Over my subsequent encounters with Tau forces, I developed comprehensive understanding of their military structure and tactical thinking. Firecast warriors, the Tau's military class. Trained from birth for warfare, but warfare as they conceive it. Disciplined, coordinated, conducted at range with minimal acceptable losses. They're not cowards, despite Imperium propaganda. They're pragmatists who recognize that dying gloriously doesn't win wars. I fought fire warriors who held positions against overwhelming odds, trading their lives to buy time for civilian evacuations. I've seen chasseurs squad leaders make tactical decisions that would impress human commanders. They fight intelligently, and that makes them dangerous in ways that pure aggression never could. Battlesuits. This is where Tau technology really shines. Crisis suits that give individual warriors capabilities matching entire tactical squads. Broadsides that can destroy tanks from kilometers away. Riptides that combine firepower and durability in ways that challenge our heaviest armor. And coordinating them all, commanders who direct battles from positions where we can't reach them. Fighting Tau battlesuits is an exercise in frustration. They engage at ranges where our weapons are less effective. They use jump jets to reposition constantly, never staying in one place long enough for us to bring overwhelming force to bear. And they're piloted by Tau who've spent decades training in combined arms tactics that exploit every advantage their technology provides. Auxiliaries. This is what really concerns me about the Tau. They don't just tolerate xenos allies, they incorporate them into their military structure. Kroot for melee combat and reconnaissance, Vespid for aerial support. And worst of all, human auxiliaries, Guevasa they're called, who fight for the Tau with the same dedication Imperial troops show the Emperor. I've had to kill humans fighting for the Tau, former Imperial citizens who'd chosen the greater good over the Emperor's light. It's always awful, but necessary. They're traitors who've abandoned humanity for Xenos lies. But it makes me wonder, if the Tau's ideology is just propaganda, why do so many humans voluntarily accept it? What are we doing wrong that Xenos offering equality seems preferable to Imperial rule? These are thoughts I'd never voice to the chaplains, but I think them. Every Space Marine who's fought Tau thinks them. Tau strategy and doctrine. The Tau don't fight to annihilate, they fight to incorporate. Every battle is an opportunity to demonstrate the superiority of the greater good, to show enemies that cooperation offers better outcomes than conflict. They take prisoners. They treat them well. They try to convert them. It's insidious, more dangerous than simple military conquest because it attacks the ideological foundations the Imperium rests on. If humans can see Xenos treating captives with dignity, while the Imperium treats its own citizens as expendable resources, how long before more worlds defect? Chapter 6. The Necrons. The first time I fought Necrons, I didn't understand what I was facing. The after-action report called them ancient xenotech constructs of unknown origin. The Mechanicus representatives insisted they were simply sophisticated automata, valuable for study, but not fundamentally threatening. The Mechanicus was catastrophically wrong. It was my 93rd year of service. The Blood Ravens had been dispatched to a tomb world on the eastern fringe, where mining operations had uncovered strange structures buried kilometers below the surface. The miners reported that the structures were waking up. Then, all communication ceased. We arrived expecting to find maybe some dormant defense systems, possibly some archaeotech worth salvaging. What we found was an entire civilization emerging from 60 million year hibernation, and it was not happy about being disturbed. The Necrons hit us at dusk on our first day planetside. No warning, no preliminary skirmishes, just sudden overwhelming force from enemies that materialized out of nowhere. Warriors in formations of 20, firing weapons that stripped away matter at the molecular level. Immortals backing them up with sustained fire that cut through our armor like parchment. And coordinating everything, a Necron Lord that radiated menace like a physical force. We killed dozens of them, hundreds. Bolter rounds exploding against metal bodies, melter guns reducing chassis to slag, power weapons cleaving through ancient mechanisms. We were winning. Then they started getting back up. Not through repair, not through reinforcement. The destroyed Necrons simply reconstructed themselves, matter flowing back together, damaged components regenerating until they were whole again and continuing the attack. We'd reduce one to scattered components and move on, only to have it rejoin the battle 30 seconds later, perfectly functional. They can't be killed, one of my battle brothers shouted, panic edging into his voice. Everything can be killed, Brother-Sergeant Corvin replied, his voice steady, despite the impossibility of what we faced. We just need to kill them harder. We adapted, focused fire to completely atomize individual Necrons before they could resurrect. Used plasma weapons to superheat bodies beyond their reconstruction threshold. targeted what looked like command units, hoping that severing their coordination would make them vulnerable. It worked. Barely. We survived that first engagement with 40% casualties. The Necrons withdrew, phasing out of reality with the same abruptness they'd arrived with, leaving behind only fading energy signatures and a dozen of their fallen that we'd managed to damage beyond repair. The Mechanicus tech priests who examined the destroyed Necrons went silent, absolutely silent. Finally, after an hour of intensive study, the senior Mago spoke. This technology predates the Imperium by 50 million years, predates human civilization. These are not constructs. These were living beings who transferred their consciousness into mechanical bodies. And they're waking up across the galaxy. That's when I understood the true scope of what we faced. The Necrons weren't a xenos threat in the conventional sense. They were the previous galactic superpower, the civilization that ruled before humanity existed, and they'd simply been sleeping. Now they were awakening, reclaiming their tomb worlds, and they remembered when they'd owned the entire galaxy. We're squatters in their house, and they want it back. Over subsequent encounters with Necrons, I learned to recognize the depth of threat they represented. Necron warriors, the basic troops. Once, 60 million years ago, they were living beings. The Necrontyre, they'd sold their souls to gods they didn't understand. The Citan, star-eating abominations from before time had meaning. The Citan promised immortality, delivered it by transferring Necrontyre consciousness into living metal bodies that couldn't die. The warriors are what remained after that transfer. Minds eroded by millions of years of hibernation, reduced to simple programming, but still incredibly dangerous. They don't fear, don't tire, don't break. They execute their protocols with mechanical perfection. And those protocols were refined during the war in heaven, when they fought gods and won. Immortals, better preserved Necrons who retained more of their original consciousness. Still warriors, still implacable, but capable of tactical thinking and adaptation. They carry weapons developed during the war in heaven, weapons that make our finest technology look primitive. I've been hit by gas weapons, felt the molecular disintegration as the beams stripped away armor, flesh, and bone layer by layer. Only my enhanced physiology and immediate medical intervention saved me. A normal human would have been reduced to constituent atoms before they realized they'd been shot. Lichguard and Deathmarks, the elite. Necrons who maintain significant portions of their original personality and skills. Lichguard serve as royal protectors, wielding weapons that can cut through tank armor. Deathmarks are assassins who can phase between dimensions, appearing behind enemy lines to eliminate leadership with weapons that ignore conventional defenses. Fighting these variants requires completely abandoning standard tactics. You can't intimidate them. They're already dead. You can't break their morale. They don't have emotions. You can't outmaneuver them. They teleport. The only option is overwhelming sustained firepower applied until they're physically incapable of resurrection. Necron lords and overlords, the nobility. Necrons, who retain their full consciousness and personalities through the Great Sleep. They remember the Necrontyre civilization, remember choosing biotransference, remember the war in heaven when they killed actual gods. And they're angry at the Citan who deceived them, angry at the old ones who won the war, angry at the younger races who now infest their former empire. They wake up after 60 million years to find creatures they consider primitives occupying their tomb worlds. And they respond with the technological might of a civilization that reached its peak while humanity's ancestors were still single-celled organisms. I've only faced a Necron overlord once. It moved with fluid grace that belied its mechanical nature, wielding a staff of light that disintegrated everything it touched. It spoke, actually spoke, in a voice that resonated from speakers that shouldn't exist, mocking us for our fragility, our brief lifespans, our insignificance compared to the eternal dynasty it represented. We killed it eventually, but only through sacrificing 7 battle brothers to create an opening for a meltagun blast at point-blank range. And even then, I'm not certain it's permanently dead. Necron lords have resurrection protocols beyond anything the basic troops possess. It might be reconstructing right now in some tomb deep beneath the world where we fought, preparing for the next encounter. What terrifies us about Necrons? The Necrons prove that the Imperium isn't the oldest, isn't the most advanced, isn't the rightful inheritors of the galaxy. They were here first. They built a civilization that spanned the stars when Terra was still a primitive ball of molten rock, and they have the technology to back up their claim to galactic dominance. Their weapons operate on principles we barely understand. Gauss flares that strip matter atom by atom, particle whips that phase through armor, war scythes that cut through reality itself. And these are their basic weapons, the ones they give to their simplest troops. We haven't seen what their advanced technology can do. Their resurrection protocols mock the concept of death. We're space marines, we accept dying in the Emperor's service, but we expect death to be final, meaningful, an ending that matters. Necrons just come back, die 100 times and resurrect 100 times, wearing us down through simple attrition until we run out of ammunition before they run out of bodies. Their strategic capabilities dwarf ours. They have ships that can crack planets, weapons that can extinguish stars, technology that manipulates space and time. During the war in heaven, they faced old ones who could create entire species, including the Eldar, and Citan who ate suns for sustenance, and the Necrons won that war. What can they do to us if they ever fully commit their forces? The Silent King. Intelligence suggests the Necrons have a supreme leader called the Silent King, who commanded their forces during the war in heaven. He disappeared after the war ended, but reports indicate he may have returned. If true, if a strategic intelligence that fought gods and won is now coordinating Necron awakening across the galaxy, we face a threat that makes chaos look manageable by comparison. The Silent King commanded technology that killed Citan, beings that existed before the universe had stars. He orchestrated a war that reshaped the galaxy, and he's had 60 million years to plan what comes next. If he's awakening his dynasties systematically, if he's preparing for a second conquest of the galaxy, do we even have a chance? Can the Imperium, for all its might, stand against the full mobilization of a civilization that conquered the galaxy once before? Why we don't talk about Necrons. The Imperium's propaganda presents humanity as the rightful rulers of the galaxy, the Emperor's chosen species destined for dominance. The Necrons prove this is a comfortable lie. We're recent arrivals claiming ownership of territory that belonged to someone else for millions of. The Imperium's propaganda presents humanity as the rightful rulers of the galaxy, the Emperor's chosen species destined for dominance. The Necrons prove this is a comfortable lie. We're recent arrivals claiming ownership of territory that belonged to someone else for millions of years before we existed. More terrifying, the Necrons aren't invading, they're reclaiming. From their perspective, we're the xenos infestation that needs purging from their tomb worlds. We're the primitives who stumbled into technology we don't understand and claimed it as our own. We're the temporary occupants who'll be swept away once they finish waking up. This flips the entire Imperial narrative. We're not defenders of rightful human territory. We're trespassers in someone else's ancient empire, and the original owners are coming back to evict us. Space Marines don't speak this truth to normal humans. The Imperial Guard needs to believe they fight for humanity's rightful dominion. Planetary governors need to believe the Emperor's protection is absolute. Citizens need faith that the Imperium will endure forever, but we know better. We've fought Necrons, seen their technology, understood the implications of their awakening, and we carry the uncomfortable knowledge that we might be living in the twilight of humanity's galactic dominance, the brief period between the Necrons' sleep and their full awakening. Strategic assessment. Currently, most Necrons remain dormant. Only a fraction of tomb worlds have awakened, and those that have often suffer from damage accumulated during millions of years of hibernation. Their forces are disorganized, their command structures fragmentary. We fight them piecemeal, defeating individual dynasties before they can coordinate with others. This is our advantage, our only advantage. If the Necrons ever achieve full awakening, if their dynasties unify, if the Silent King successfully coordinates a galactic reconquest, the Imperium falls. Not might fall, will fall. We lack the technology to counter theirs, lack the numbers to match their resurrection capabilities, and lack the strategic depth to withstand a civilization that thinks in terms of millions of years. Our strategy is simple. Find tomb worlds before they wake fully, destroy them while they're vulnerable, prevent coordination between dynasties, buy time and pray that something changes before they achieve critical mass. It's not a winning strategy, it's a delaying tactic, but it's all we have. What I think about Necrons. I think they're proof that the galaxy doesn't care about humanity's manifest destiny. We're not special. We're not chosen. We're just another species trying to survive in a universe that hosts threats beyond our comprehension. The Necrons were once living beings like us. They faced extinction from natural causes. Their original bodies were frail, dying from radiation poisoning on their homeworld. They made a deal to survive, traded their mortality for eternal life in mechanical bodies. It cost them everything: their souls, their ability to feel, their connection to whatever makes life meaningful beyond simple existence. They became immortal, but lost the reasons immortality might be desirable. Are we heading down the same path? The Imperium already trades humanity for survival. Servitors, lobotomized into living machines. The Mechanicus, replacing flesh with augmetics until they're more machine than human. Even Space Marines, enhanced beyond baseline humanity, becoming weapons that barely resemble what we once were. How far can we go before we become like the Necrons? Alive but not living, eternal but empty, powerful but purposeless. These are dangerous thoughts, heretical thoughts. But fighting Necrons makes you think them, makes you wonder if survival at any cost is truly survival, or just postponed extinction. Final assessment: Necrons are the most technologically advanced enemy we face, the most strategically sophisticated, the most existentially threatening. If they achieve full awakening and coordination, they end the Imperium. Not through invasion, but through simple reclamation of what was always theirs. We fight them with everything we have, pray to the Emperor that they remain fragmented, hope that internal conflicts between dynasties prevent unified action, cross our fingers that 60 million years of hibernation has left them too damaged to pose the threat they once did. But we know the truth. The galaxy belonged to them once. It might belong to them again. And there's nothing we can do about it except fight harder, die bravely, and hope the next generation finds answers we couldn't. That's what Space Marines really think about Necrons. We think they're the nightmare scenario that proves the Imperium's dominance is temporary, contested, and potentially ending, and we're terrified of what happens when they finish waking up. Chapter 7. The Minor. Xenos. Not every Xenos threat deserves the strategic concern of Tyranids or Necrons. The galaxy hosts countless minor species, some dangerous in specific contexts, most just obstacles to be cleared, all destined for eventual extinction as humanity expands. These are the aliens that barely register in Imperial consciousness, but consume the majority of Space Marine deployments. After 2 centuries of service, I've encountered dozens of minor xenos species. Most aren't worth remembering individually, but collectively, they've taught me important lessons about the galaxy's diversity and the Imperium's approach to anything non-human. The Kroot, mercenary avians who serve the Tau but maintain independence. They're evolutionary scavengers who absorb genetic traits from what they consume. Eat Orks long enough and you become stronger. Consume Eldar and gain their agility. It's a fascinating but horrifying adaptation. I fought Kroot on Dalith. They're surprisingly effective in close combat, using primitive weapons alongside Tau pulse rifles. What disturbed me most was their intelligence. They're not savage beasts, but sophisticated warriors who choose mercenary service over building their own civilization. They've decided that serving others is more profitable than independence. In a way, they're honest about what the Tau won't admit. The greater good functions through species specialization, with each Xenos race filling specific military roles. The Kroot are professional soldiers who've accepted that their niche in the Tau Empire is violence for hire. Threat assessment: medium. Dangerous in close combat. Surprisingly intelligent, but ultimately limited by their dependence on Tau support. The Hrud, Xenos that manipulate time fields, aging everything around them. Fighting Hrud is surreal. You watch your armor corrode in real time, feel decades passing in minutes. I encountered them once on a Space Hulk. We lost 3 battle brothers to rapid aging before we withdrew. Their corpses looked ancient, centuries old, though they'd only been exposed for minutes. The Hrud aren't aggressive by nature. They're refugees, fleeing something, we don't know what, and infesting Imperial space as they migrate. But their time manipulation makes them incredibly dangerous when cornered. You can't just shoot them. Your bullets age to rust before reaching them. You need specialized weapons and tactics I only partially understand. Threat assessment: high in specific circumstances, usually avoidable but deadly if engagement is forced. The Rangdan. We don't talk about the Rangdan. The Imperium fought 3 wars against them during the Great Crusade, losing entire Space Marine legions. The details are classified beyond even inquisitorial access. I only know they existed because ancient battle honors mention the Rangdan genocides. Whatever the Rangdan were, they were dangerous enough that the Imperium expunged most records of them. When even the memory of a xenos species is considered too dangerous to preserve, you know humanity faced something truly terrible. Threat assessment. Unknown. Possibly extinct. Hopefully extinct. The Q-all. Insectoid xenos from the galactic core. They're primitively technological by Imperial standards, but compensate through horrifying numbers and biological adaptations. Q-all swarms can overwhelm entire systems through sheer reproductive capacity. The Imperium maintains extensive quarantine protocols around Q-all space, ensuring they remain contained in the galactic core. If they ever broke containment and spread into Imperial space, they'd be a Tyranid-scale threat, different biology, similar problem of overwhelming numbers and rapid adaptation. I've never fought Q-all personally. Brother Captain Meridius has, during a containment operation near the core. He described them as Tyranids if Tyranids could build starships, which is possibly the most terrifying comparison I've ever heard. Threat assessment. Extreme if containment fails. Currently manageable through quarantine. The Barghisi, savage xenos, known for extreme aggression and physical strength. They're what would result if Orks had been designed by someone who prioritized brutality over everything else. Barghisi attack on sight, fight to the death, and apparently don't have any concept of civilization beyond kill everything that isn't Barghisi. The Imperium designates Barghisi space as off-limits and just avoids them. We can't exterminate them. They breed too fast and their homeworlds are too well defended. We can't negotiate with them. They don't talk, just attack. So we quarantine them and hope they stay contained. It's embarrassing, honestly. The Imperium, for all its might, has multiple xenospecies that we just avoid because exterminating them would cost more than they're worth. The Barghisi are one of several reminders that purge all xenos is aspirational, not actual policy. Threat assessment. High in their territory. Irrelevant elsewhere if containment holds. The sloth. Parasitic worms that infest and control other species. Horror show xenos that make your skin crawl just thinking about them. They infiltrate human societies, taking over key individuals, spreading corruption and degradation from within. I fought sloth-controlled humans on Cyclops. The hosts looked normal until you killed them, and the parasites emerged. Maggot-like creatures fleeing dying bodies, looking for new hosts. We had to burn everything, ensure no sloth escaped to infest others. What disturbed me most? The infected humans retained some awareness. They knew they were controlled, knew what was being done with their bodies, but couldn't resist. Just trapped in their own flesh while parasites used them like puppets. Threat assessment, medium-high. Insidious threat that requires total purge to eliminate. The Umbra, shadow creatures from some dark dimension. We don't understand what they are or why they hate light, but they emerge from darkness to kill and consume. Fighting Umbra is surreal. Your weapons pass through them unless you use specialized light-based technology. I encountered Umbra once in Underhive tunnels on a hive world. We lost 2 battle brothers before we realized conventional weapons were useless. Had to fall back, return with flamers and illumination rounds, burn them out of the shadows they inhabited. Are they alive in any conventional sense? Are they even material? The Mechanicus has theories but no answers. The Umbra just exist, hate light, kill anything illuminated, and vanish when properly countered. Threat assessment. Low unless fighting in darkness. Manageable with proper equipment. What these minor xenos teach us. The galaxy is more diverse and stranger than Imperial propaganda suggests. We're taught that humanity is destined to rule, that xenos are inferior obstacles to be swept aside. Reality is more complicated. Some xenos we can exterminate, some we can quarantine, some we just avoid because the cost of purging them exceeds the benefit. And some, like the Kroot who serve, the Tau, we face as auxiliaries of larger threats, rather than independent enemies. The Imperium's xenocide campaigns target species that pose direct threats or occupy valuable resources, but countless xenos survive in the galaxy's margins, too remote or too difficult to purge, existing in the spaces between human-controlled systems. This creates a strategic problem the Codex Astartes doesn't really address. How do you exterminate the galaxy's xenos when the galaxy is too large to fully patrol and the xenos too numerous to individually hunt? The answer, uncomfortable as it is that we don't. We can't. We focus on major threats and manage minor ones, accepting that complete xenocide is impossible and settling for containment of threats we can't afford to fight. The hierarchy of xenos. Worth. Over 2 centuries of service, I've developed personal rankings for which xenos deserve our effort. Priority 1, existential threats, Tyranids, could consume all biomass in galaxy. Necrons, previous galactic rulers awakening. Chaos-corrupted xenos, combine xenos threat with warp corruption. Priority 2, major regional threats, Orks, constant warfare, but containable Eldar, sophisticated and dangerous, but declining. Tau, expanding and converting humans. Priority 3, significant but manageable, dark Eldar, raiders, not conquerors. Q-Yaw, contained but dangerous if they escape. Shrewd, time manipulation is problematic. Priority 4, minor threats, Kroot, auxiliaries, not independent threat, Bargesi, quarantined, not expanding, Sloth, insidious but rare. Priority 5, ignore unless encountered, Umbra, regional, easily countered. Various primitive species, countless unnamed minor xenos. This hierarchy is unofficial, never written in any formal doctrine, but every space marine who survives to veteran status develops similar assessments. We learn to prioritize threats, to accept that we can't fight everything simultaneously, to focus our limited resources where they matter most. The truth about minor xenos. Most aren't worth our time. They're obstacles, not threats. Irritations, not dangers. The Imperium deploys guard regiments to purge minor xenos, reserves space marines for major threats. But even minor xenos teach lessons. They show us the galaxy's diversity, remind us that evolution produces countless solutions to survival's challenges, demonstrate that humanity's biological pattern isn't the only viable one. Every xenos species, no matter how minor, represents a different approach to existence. The Kroot's genetic scavenging, the Hrud's time manipulation, the Sloth's parasitism, the Umbra's shadow existence. Each one is an evolutionary experiment that succeeded well enough to achieve sentience and star travel. Are all of them inferior to humanity? The Imperium says yes, absolutely, without question. Our supremacy is destiny, not opinion. But I've fought too many xenos, seen too much diversity, encountered too many species that evolved advantages humans lack. Physically, many xenos surpass us. Technologically, some exceed us. Psychically, several match or exceed our capabilities. Humanity's advantage isn't superiority in any objective sense. It's numbers, organization, and the Emperor's will manifested through the Imperium's vast infrastructure. We win through overwhelming force and logistical superiority, not because humans are inherently better than xenos. This is heresy to admit. The Imperium's ideology requires belief in human supremacy, but ideology doesn't survive contact with reality. And reality is that the galaxy hosts countless species that challenge our assumed superiority. We purge them anyway, not because they're inferior, but because the Imperium requires it. Because the Emperor's vision doesn't include coexistence. Because humanity's expansion demands eliminating competition for resources and territory. Is this right? Is this just? Are we the heroes of this story? Or just another expansionist empire that exterminates rivals? I don't know. I've killed thousands of xenos over 2 centuries, purged species that might have been capable of reason, cooperation, coexistence. I've done this because it's my purpose, my duty, my chosen role as a space marine. But I've never been certain it was righteous, just necessary by the logic of the Imperium I serve. That's what space marines think about minor xenos, not the propaganda about inferior creatures destined for extermination. The complicated truth that we kill them because we must, not because they deserve it by any objective standard. We're not the galaxy's police, we're its apex predator. And predators don't need moral justification for hunting, they just need hunger and opportunity. Minor xenos provide both. Chapter 8. The Truth. I'm 206 years old as I record this testimony. 2 centuries of service to the Blood Ravens chapter, to the Imperium, to humanity's survival in a hostile galaxy. I've fought 17 different major xenos species and dozens of minor variants. I've killed tens of thousands of aliens across 43 worlds. I've earned every battle honor on my armor and buried more battle brothers than I can count. And after all of it, after 2 centuries of warfare against the galaxy's non-human threats, I'm going to tell you what Space Marines really think about xenos. Not the propaganda we recite for Imperial officials, not the simple hatred we're supposed to feel. The complicated, nuanced, carefully hidden truth that we'd never speak to anyone outside the Adeptus Astartes. The Imperium teaches that xenos are incomprehensible, alien, so fundamentally other than humans. Understanding them is impossible and unnecessary. Just kill them and move on. This is a lie we tell civilians to keep them properly hostile to non-human life. The truth? We understand xenos extremely well. We have to. Ignorance gets you killed. Every Space Marine who survives their first decade of service develops comprehensive knowledge of xenos biology, psychology, tactics, and culture. We study our enemies more thoroughly than we study humans, because the stakes of misunderstanding are higher. I can tell you how Orks think, what motivates them, why they fight the way they do. I understand Eldar pride and their species' tragic awareness of their own decline. I grasp Tau ideology and why it appeals to humans who see the Imperium's darkness. I've learned to predict Tyranid adaptation patterns and Necron strategic thinking. Understanding doesn't mean sympathy. I still kill them efficiently, but I kill them because I understand them, not despite failing to understand them. We respect some of them. This is the most dangerous admission. The one that would get me sent to chaplains for re-indoctrination if I spoke it in official settings. Some xenos earn our respect. Not moral respect. They're still enemies who must be destroyed. But martial respect. Recognition that they're worthy opponents who fight well, embody virtues we value, and die with honor by their own cultural standards. Orks are honest warriors who live for combat and die satisfied if they find worthy enemies. The Eldar are masters of warfare refined over millions of years. Tau doctrine is pragmatic and effective. Even Tyranids command respect for their perfect evolutionary optimization. However horrifying that optimization might be, we respect enemies who fight intelligently, adapt to challenges, and embody martial excellence even within their alien natures. This doesn't make us traitors. It makes us realistic about the quality of opposition we face. The alternative is underestimating them, dismissing them as inferior and dying because you failed to recognize their actual capabilities. Respect keeps us sharp, keeps us alive. We fear them, Space. Marines aren't supposed to know fear. Our indoctrination includes psycho-conditioning that suppresses fear responses. We're biologically and psychologically engineered to face horror without flinching. But fear isn't always emotional. Sometimes it's logical. Rational assessment that certain enemies pose threats our capabilities may not adequately counter. I fear Tyranids because they're potentially unstoppable through conventional means. Fear Necrons because they might be the galaxy's rightful rulers, and we're just temporary occupants. Fear the Eldar because they're what humanity could become if we follow similar paths to corruption and decline. This fear is useful. It drives preparation, motivates caution, ensures we don't underestimate existential threats. But it's also corrosive. Carrying the knowledge that humanity faces enemies we might not overcome, that the Imperium's dominance is contested and potentially temporary, wears on you over decades of service. We question the Imperium's doctrine. This is the most heretical truth, the one I'd be executed for speaking openly. After 2 centuries of fighting xenos, I no longer believe the Imperium's absolute prohibition on coexistence is wise. Not morally. I lack authority to judge the Emperor's vision, but practically, strategically, as a matter of maximizing humanity's survival prospects. The Tau offer alliance. We reject it because they're xenos, but their technology is effective, their governance produces loyal citizens, and their expansion challenges us militarily. What if we'd accepted cooperation instead of conflict? Would humanity be stronger or weaker? The Eldar occasionally assist us against chaos threats. We treat them as temporary allies of convenience, but what if we formalized cooperation? They're declining anyway. Why not integrate their knowledge before it's lost? Some minor xeno species pose no threat to human dominion. We exterminate them because they're non-human, not because they're dangerous. Does this serve humanity's interests or just satisfy ideological purity? I don't have answers. I'm a warrior, not a philosopher. But the questions exist, and 2 centuries of war have made them impossible to ignore. We carry the weight of truth. The Imperium needs simple narratives. Citizens need to believe humanity is supreme, that xenos are inferior, that our ultimate victory is inevitable. Imperial Guard needs to believe they fight righteous battles against unworthy enemies. Planetary governors need confidence that Imperial protection is absolute. Space Marines know better. We've seen the diversity of xenos' life, understood their capabilities, recognized that the galaxy is more complex and humanity's position more precarious than propaganda suggests. We carry this knowledge silently, speak the official narrative in public, kill xenos efficiently and without hesitation, maintain the Imperium's ideological foundations even while privately understanding their limitations. This is our burden, knowing uncomfortable truths while enforcing comfortable lies. Understanding that the Imperium's xenophobia is politically necessary, even if strategically suboptimal. Recognizing that humanity's survival might eventually require adaptations the current ideology can't accommodate. What I wish I could tell humanity, if I could speak freely to the Imperium's citizens, without fear of censure or execution, I'd tell them this. The galaxy is vast and strange and filled with threats beyond your comprehension. But it's also filled with wonder, with diversity, with countless approaches to existence and consciousness and civilization building. Xenos aren't uniformly evil. They're not moral agents in ways humans would recognize. They operate according to alien value systems that don't map cleanly onto human ethics. But many are rational actors pursuing survival and prosperity according to their own natures. Some Xenos should absolutely be exterminated. Tyranids consume everything. Dark Eldar are irredeemably sadistic. Orks exist purely for warfare and can't be redirected to peaceful coexistence. These threats require extinction, but others, the Tau who offer alliance, the craft world Eldar who occasionally assist against chaos, the countless minor species that pose no real threat to human dominion. Are we serving humanity's interests by exterminating them, or just enforcing ideological purity? I don't know. I'm not wise enough to answer. I just know that after 2 centuries of killing xenos, the certainty I felt as a neophyte has eroded into complex uncertainty. The galaxy is messier than the Imperium's narratives allow, and I wish we could acknowledge that complexity without being declared heretics. What Space Marines really think. The final truth. We think the Imperium's xenophobia is necessary but tragic. Necessary because humanity does face existential threats from non-human species. Tragic because it forces us to exterminate species that might have been capable of coexistence if circumstances were different. We think each xenos race is unique, requiring specific understanding and tailored tactics. Treating them as uniformly inferior is politically expedient but tactically foolish. We think some xenos earn respect through martial excellence, even as we kill them. This doesn't make us traitors. It makes us honest about the quality of opposition we face. We think humanity's supremacy is contested, not guaranteed. We might win the struggle for galactic dominance. We might lose. The outcome depends on adaptations we make and advantages we develop, not on any inherent human superiority. We think the future might require uncomfortable compromises, alliances with lesser evil xenos against greater evil threats, incorporation of xenos technology when it exceeds human capability, acknowledgement that ideological purity matters less than survival. We think these thoughts privately, carry them silently, and continue executing our duties because we're Space Marines, and our purpose is to serve humanity regardless of personal doubts. My final message: I'm recording this testimony for future generations of Space Marines who'll face the same enemies, the same moral complexities, the same burden of knowledge that contradicts official narratives. Kill xenos efficiently, study them thoroughly, respect them appropriately, fear them rationally, question the doctrine carefully, and never, ever speak these truths to anyone who isn't one of us. The Imperium needs its simple narratives. Citizens need their comfortable certainties, but we, the angels of death, the Emperor's finest warriors, the bulwark against the alien, we have to see reality clearly, even when reality is uncomfortable. After 2 centuries of service, fighting 17 major xeno species across 43 worlds, this is what I believe. The galaxy belongs to no one. Humanity's claim to dominance is contested by species as old, as capable, as determined as we are. Our survival requires not just martial excellence, but strategic wisdom. The ability to distinguish between xenos that must be exterminated and xenos that might be tolerated, or even, in the most extreme circumstances, cooperated with. This isn't heresy, it's pragmatism. The galaxy is too large, too diverse, too filled with threats for simple solutions to suffice. We need nuance even as we maintain the doctrinal clarity the Imperium requires. We're Space Marines. We serve humanity. We kill the Emperor's enemies without hesitation. But we do it with eyes open, minds engaged, understanding the complex reality beneath the simple slogans. That's what we really think about xenos. Not the propaganda, the truth we carry silently across centuries of service, hoping that someday the Imperium will be strong enough to acknowledge complexity without abandoning purpose. Until that day comes, we fight, we kill, we serve, and we keep our uncomfortable knowledge to ourselves. Because that's what Space Marines do. Brother-Sergeant Davian Thule, Bloodraven's 3rd Company, recording this testimony in my 206th year of service. May the Emperor guide those who come after me. May they find wisdom I couldn't achieve. The galaxy is vast. The enemies are many. And the truth is always more complicated than the propaganda suggests. Ave Imperator, death to the xenos, and may future generations find better answers than we have. There's something I've never included in any official after-action report. Something that would get me declared excommunicate traitoris if the Inquisition learned of it. But after 2 centuries of service, after watching hundreds of battle brothers die fighting enemies we barely understand, I feel compelled to record it. I've spoken with xenos. Actually spoken with them, not interrogations before execution. That's standard protocol. Real conversations, exchanges of ideas, attempts to understand why they fight, what they believe, what they want from this galaxy we all inhabit. It started 70 years ago on Cronus. We'd cornered an Eldar farseer during the final stages of planetary liberation. Standard protocol demanded immediate execution. But something about the way she looked at me, not with fear or hatred, but with something approaching pity, made me pause. "You're going to kill me," she said in perfect Gothic. "I've foreseen it, seen the exact angle of your blade, the moment my spirit stone shatters. But before you do, I want you to understand something. We're not your enemies by choice. We fight you because you leave us no alternative." "You're xenos," I replied. "That's all the reason we need." "Is it though?" The farseer shifted slightly, and I noticed she wasn't even trying to escape, just sitting there wounded, accepting her fate. "Your Imperium spans 1,000,000 worlds. We have, what? A few dozen craft worlds, scattered and dying. We're no threat to your dominance. We just want to survive, to preserve what remains of our civilization. But your doctrine requires our extinction, so here we are. Both of us trapped in a war neither of us truly wants. The Emperor's vision." "The Emperor," she interrupted, "is a corpse on a throne who hasn't spoken clearly in 10,000 years. You're killing for the interpretation of his vision, not the vision itself. Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, his plan didn't account for the galaxy changing this much? That rigid adherence to 10,000-year-old doctrine might not serve humanity's actual interests." I should have killed her then. Should have ended the conversation and filed a standard report. But something in her words resonated with doubts I'd been carrying for decades. "What would you have us do?" I asked. "Accept xenos? Abandon the Imperium's founding principles? Coexist with species that have threatened humanity for millennia?" "Not all of us have threatened you," she replied quietly. "Some of us have even helped. How many times have Eldar forces intervened against chaos when our interests aligned with yours? How many human worlds have we saved from demonic incursion, only to be repaid with betrayal once the immediate threat passed? Because you're manipulators. Everything you do serves hidden agendas we can't fathom." "Of course we have agendas," the farseer admitted. "So do you. The difference is, we're honest about pursuing our species' survival, while you pretend your xenocide is righteous rather than pragmatic. At least we don't dress up genocide in moral superiority. That stung because it was accurate. The Imperium does dress up strategic extermination in religious righteousness. Makes it easier for soldiers to kill if they believe they're doing holy work. I killed her eventually. Had to. Leaving a xenos alive would have raised questions I couldn't answer. But the conversation stayed with me, still stays with me, because she was right about one thing. We kill, not because it's righteous, but because it's expedient. And we've built an entire religious ideology around that expediency to make it palatable. I had similar conversations with a Tau watercast diplomat, a Kroot mercenary, even an Ork war boss who managed coherent philosophy between battle cries. Each conversation revealed the same uncomfortable truth. Our enemies aren't mindless or evil. They're rational actors pursuing survival according to their own values, and our conflict stems from competing claims to the same resources, not from any objective moral superiority on either side. The Imperium requires certainty. Citizens need to believe humanity is righteous, that our enemies are wrong, that our ultimate victory is both deserved and inevitable. This certainty maintains morale, enables coordination across 1,000,000 worlds, and provides the ideological foundation for continued warfare. But certainty is expensive. It costs wisdom, flexibility, the ability to recognize when circumstances change enough to require doctrinal adaptation. I've watched the Imperium reject potential advantages because accepting them would require acknowledging xenos might contribute something valuable. Tau plasma technology that exceeds our own, rejected because it's alien. Eldar knowledge about the warp that could enhance our defenses, ignored because they're manipulators. Kroot genetic engineering that might enhance human capabilities, heresy to even consider. How many human lives could we have saved if we were willing to learn from xenos instead of just killing them? How much suffering could we have prevented if ideology didn't prohibit pragmatic cooperation? These aren't idle questions. They're strategic concerns with real consequences. Every rejection of potentially useful xenos knowledge costs human lives. Every refusal to accept temporary alliance against common threats weakens our position. Every instance of ideological purity prioritized over practical survival makes the Imperium less resilient, and we Space Marines see this. We're not blind to the costs of certainty. We understand that the Imperium's rigid doctrine creates vulnerabilities that more adaptive civilizations, like the Tau, exploit effectively. But we can't say this openly. Can't suggest that maybe, just maybe, 10,000-year-old doctrine requires updating for current circumstances. Because questioning doctrine is heresy, and heresy gets you executed regardless of how valid your concerns might be. So we carry this knowledge silently, fight wars we know could be avoided, kill enemies who might have been allies against greater threats, and we accept that this is the price of maintaining the Imperium's ideological cohesion. I'm recording this testimony for the Space Marines who will come after me, the ones who will fight the same enemies I've fought, face the same moral complexities I've faced, carry the same burden of uncomfortable knowledge. Here's what you need to understand. The galaxy is changing faster than the Imperium's doctrine can adapt. The Tyranids grow stronger with every world they consume. The Necrons awaken in greater numbers each century. The Tau expand despite our containment efforts, and humanity's response is to cite the Codex Astartes and insist the old ways are sufficient. They're not sufficient. Haven't been sufficient for millennia. We survive through raw military power and sheer numbers, not through strategic superiority. And against enemies that adapt faster than we do, raw power has limitations. The next generation of Space Marines must be willing to think beyond Codex doctrine, to recognize when circumstances require improvisation, to understand that serving humanity's survival might sometimes mean questioning the methods we've used for 10,000 years. This doesn't make you traitors. It makes you realists. The Imperium's doctrine was written for a galaxy that no longer exists. We've spent millennia fighting the same enemies with the same tactics. And somehow we're surprised when those enemies evolve countermeasures while we remain static. Learn from your enemies. Study them, not just to kill them, but to understand what makes them effective. When you encounter Tau doctrine that works better than Codex approaches, recognize the effectiveness even as you maintain proper hatred for the xenos who employ it. When Eldar offer warnings about chaos threats, consider that maybe their precognition serves both their interests and yours. Stay loyal to humanity. Stay committed to the Imperium's survival, but recognize that loyalty and commitment might sometimes require flexibility that official doctrine doesn't permit. Here's something else I've never reported. There's an informal network of Space Marines who think like I do. Not a conspiracy, nothing so organized or heretical. Just veteran battle brothers across multiple chapters who've reached similar conclusions after decades of service. We recognize each other through careful phrasing, oblique references, the way we talk about xenos threats with more nuance than official reports allow. We don't meet formally, don't coordinate actions, don't plot against the Imperium. We just acknowledge each other, confirm that we're not alone in carrying uncomfortable truths. This network spans chapters. I've identified members in the Ultramarines, the Salamanders, the Blood Angels, even the normally rigid Imperial fists. Veterans who've survived long enough to recognize that the galaxy's complexity exceeds the Imperium's simple narratives. We don't try to change doctrine. That would be heresy and futile. We just prepare ourselves and our successors for the reality that someday, maybe centuries from now, maybe millennia, the Imperium will face a choice: adapt or die. And when that moment comes, there need to be Space Marines who understand enough about xenos to make informed decisions rather than just defaulting to purge everything. This is our quiet resistance, not against the Imperium, but against the intellectual rigidity that threatens to make the Imperium obsolete. We serve humanity by preserving knowledge the Imperium doesn't want preserved, by maintaining capability for nuanced thinking in an organization that demands absolute certainty. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in these words, you're probably part of this network whether you know it or not. Welcome. You're not alone. You're not a traitor. You're just a warrior who's survived long enough to see past the propaganda to the complicated reality beneath. Stay vigilant, stay loyal, but stay thinking, because the galaxy will keep changing whether the Imperium's doctrine changes with it or not, and humanity's survival might eventually depend on battle brothers who maintained the capacity for adaptive thinking, despite all pressure to conform to rigid certainty. After 206 years of service, after everything I've seen and done, I have one final hope for humanity's future: that we learn to distinguish between necessary conflicts and ideological ones. That we develop the wisdom to recognize when xenos extermination serves our survival and when it just satisfies doctrinal purity at strategic cost. That we become strong enough to adapt our approach without abandoning our principles. The Imperium will never formally ally with xenos. I understand that. Our ideology can't accommodate it. Our citizens can't accept it. Our entire civilization is built on the foundation of human supremacy. But maybe, just maybe, we can become more selective about which xenos we prioritize for extermination, more willing to accept temporary truces against common threats, more open to learning from enemies, even as we fight them. This isn't a weakness. It's strategic sophistication, the difference between surviving the next 10,000 years and collapsing under the weight of conflicts we didn't need to fight. That's my hope, my prayer to the Emperor, if he's listening, that humanity's future includes the wisdom to be flexible within our principles, adaptive within our doctrine, pragmatic within our ideology, and if that makes me a heretic, so be it. I've served faithfully for 2 centuries, killed thousands of the Emperor's enemies, earned every honor on my armor. If questioning whether we fight every battle optimally is heresy, then I'll accept that judgment. But I'll die knowing I served humanity's actual interests, not just its comfortable certainties, Ave Imperator. Death to the xenos, and may those who come after me find the wisdom I couldn't fully achieve.